Bonjour à tous. Merci d'être ici avec nous tous aujourd'hui. Je m'appelle Melanie Keita et voilà, je suis ici pour présenter cet atelier au nom de l'Union pour la Méditerranée. C'est une activité qui a été organisée en coopération avec l'UNIDI et dans le cadre du Forum international des femmes leadership. Pour les personnes que vous êtes enregistrées pour l'événement du 22 juillet, c'est
just a few technical information beside giving the floor to our two speakers today. The event will have the translation in the interpretation in English, French, Arabic. I would kindly ask you to put your question in the chat. You will have also the possibility to raise your hand and intervene by audio and video, but please try to keep your question focused and short, maximum 3 minutes, to give the floor also to the other participants. I would like to ask you also to put your questions in English and French in the chat in order, and in any case, we will be able to reply to both languages, but the interpretation will be also available in Arabic. The live script, automatic live transcript option is also activated. When you are going to raise your question on the chat or on the or via audio and video, I would kindly ask you to also introduce yourself, meaning your name, your organization or startup. And I would like also to thank UNIDO for their continuous and valuable support in all the activities focused on women entrepreneurship in the MENA region, jointly with the UFM. This collaboration started a few years ago under the program called Promoting Women Economic Empowerment in Sustainable Industrial Development in the MENA region. We are now in the second phase of the program. Hopefully there will be a third one. And this year we decided to focus our activities on access to finance. As you know, access to finance is one of the main barriers when we talk about the growth of women-led businesses for several reasons. One of them is also the difficulty to get access to potential investors. And this is why we decided to talk today about what can be done from one side on how to present your business activities and business idea to a potential investor, and what the potential investors, especially the female investors, would like to hear when they get a proposal. So the two perspectives from women entrepreneurs and from potential investors. And without further ado, let me introduce our two speakers. The first one will deliver the first session on between 10 and 11:30. There will be a break between 11:30 and 12, and then the second session will start at 12 and will last until 1:30. I'm always talking about Central European time. Let me just share my screen to introduce, sorry, a few minutes, of course, because when we want to share, it doesn't work. So hopefully you can see it. Melanie Keita Mariam, she, you will see, she's really amazing. I had the pleasure to listen her intervention in several meetings and webinars, and she will involve you really in all the discussion today. Melanie is the CEO and co-founder of Melanie Capital, the first neobank dedicated to Africa and its diaspora, based in Kenya, France, and Germany. She helped the African diaspora and international clients to finance SDGs in Africa. She is working on the impact investment field, and this is why we asked her to be with us today, for the past 7 years in Africa and Middle East, and supporting due diligence processes aiming at investment in small and medium enterprises and startups. She teaches also in business school and universities. So I'm now glad to give the floor to Melanie. Melanie, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this warm welcome. I'm really delighted to be here. I'm honored to be here. As Anna has introduced me, I'm Melanie Keita, and I'm going to be your workshop host today for this session. I'm going to start already sharing my screen. So the goal of this section is to discuss access to finance, and especially demystify access to finance for women entrepreneurs. I'm going to talk to you today as an entrepreneur myself, but also as an investor, because since 2015, I actually worked as an impact investor in different funds. First in a fund called Investisseurs et Partenaires that invested private equity into SMEs across the African region. Then in United Nations, where I was more of a financial consultant working with municipalities to finance small infrastructure. And finally at Finance in Motion, where I used to invest across the MENA region and the Sub-Saharan African region. As an investor, I was providing both lending, I was providing lending, equity, and grants. So I can tell you a little bit more about what I used to look at and how we used to make investment decisions or grants decisions. And finally, as the CEO of Melanin Capital, I've been building my own business from scratch. It's a technology business. It's a fintech. However, through this fintech, we actually provide and we lend to SMEs. So I also understand a bit further the SME side and more traditional businesses such as farming, trading, or even manufacturing. And during this experience, I've been now the CEO of Melanie Capital for 2.5 years, and I've been raising $250,000 successfully in equity, 100,000 euros in grants, and now we are raising 500,000 euro in equity. We've already had half of it, and we're raising 4 million euros in debt. So I am excited to discuss about this exciting journey, but also this very, very difficult journey of fundraising. I do understand what it is to be a woman and to raise funds and how tough it can be. So I hope I can share with you some tips during this whole session. And if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat. I'm going to start between each section of my presentation. We have approximately 3 sections today. We'll discuss a little bit more about an introduction of the investor landscape and what are the key concepts they're looking at. Then we'll dig in a little bit deeper about the functioning of an investor, how they make money. So how do they analyze basically and how do they assess investment opportunities, and we'll finally discuss about fundraising. And if you have time, I can share a bit with you the process that I went through as a CEO and what I can share. So if there's no questions so far, then I can start to dig a little bit further into the details. But so first of all, I know that a lot of you, when I was discussing with the UNIDO program, were telling me that they fear a little bit the financing and fundraising, and I completely understand. And this is not this is not surprising, because when it comes to the Middle East and African region, we actually only benefit from very few private equity funding compared to the rest of the world, which means that the funding is scarcer, and which means that investors are much more demanding out of us. And this is due to the assessment and the perception of risk. Risk is actually the likelihood of losing money for an investor. So when an investor is coming into our regions, they see that they have multiple possibilities to lose money besides even just investing into your business. Coming into small businesses means that you can be more vulnerable to external events, meaning that if there is a regulation that changes your sector, you might lose the opportunity to sell again. If, for example, you work with a bigger company or a bigger SME, but this SME goes bankrupt, then you will not be able to function. So as an investor, they really assess all those possibilities, and they see that if they go into smaller businesses as opposed to corporates that then can continue to function even if they lose 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, then that's where they start to become a little bit jittery and not really sure if they want to invest in you. But on top of the let's say vulnerabilities that we have as small businesses, they also look at the environment of our countries. So I'm originally from Mali and from Congo, where actually the political situations are not ideal. When we have elections, usually the country stops. In Mali, we even had 2 coups d'etat. So that means that for them, they see it as a likelihood that our business stops into our countries, and then if the business stops, we don't generate revenues. If we don't generate revenues, they don't get their money back. So that's just to give you a perspective about how investors apprehend coming into our countries and trying to invest in us, and knowing that we can position ourselves in a better way. So what I decided, for example, as Melanie Capital, is to build a fintech solutions that helps us SMEs to become eligible for those investors and de-risk as much as possible our business models, and show our impact so that we can benefit from impact investments. And I'll discuss a little bit more at the end of this week, at the end of this presentation, how it works. But first, let's start on our first section. And I saw that there is something on the chat. Oh, hi, Ait Abba Ayet. Thank you so much for presenting your associations. Please, anyone that also has other SMEs or associations, any initiative, please feel free to share. Feel free to share your website so that we can know a little bit more about you, and even about your challenges about financing. Did you try to raise grants, for example, or did you try to raise, I don't know, loans to do to the bank? Please share your experience. That would be very helpful for the rest of the team as well to know how it went. So as we are waiting for your experience sharing, I'll go through the first section and discuss a little bit more specific how do you know that you need to fundraise? I think this is a very important discussion, and it's important to start with it because I have a lot of entrepreneurs that come to me and say, oh, I need money. I don't know how to pay myself with my business and so on. But it's a bit the wrong approach. The question is not why, like, do you need to pay yourself and do you need to have money now? The question is, are you having a business that I'm sorry, I think there is someone that is not unmuted in the is it possible to mute the person that is talking? Thank you so much. So I was saying that most of the time, yes, people just feel that they can't pay themselves, but this is not how you know when to fundraise, because normally the basis of the business is that you are having a business that is thriving, you are growing, and now you want to expand. And for that, you need someone to provide you with a loan or with capital so that you can get to the next level. But when you're struggling, let's say, the problem is more about, are you having the right business model? Are you managing to get the right clients? Or maybe is it a COVID issue? Do you need a grant? That's more that approach. But investments, from the investor point of view or from the bank point of view, they give you money so that they can make more money. So you can't come to them saying that you're struggling. You have to come to them showing them the opportunity that you found with your business. When I have a business, I'm going to take a very specific example from the businesses I've worked with. I have lands, okay? So I decided to grow avocados. I decided to grow mangoes. Fine, but I see that I can do much better than just selling those avocados directly. I can transform those avocados into oil. But to transform it, I need a machine. That is when you need funding, for example. And you can decide what type of funding do you need. Do I need a loan? Meaning, will I have the ability to pay back every month someone with the new investments that I'm doing in my company? Or do I need equity because this is something that will help my company to grow exponentially? And I believe that in 5 years, my company can be worth double, triple. So when you understand why you need to fundraise, is if it is for a machine, if it is to expand in another country, if it is to buy a truck, and so on, then you can think about what type of funding you need. And it's important because once you know what type of funding you need, you know who to talk to. You're not going to go to the bank to ask for capital. You're not going to go to an equity investor to ask for 20,000, because equity investors go just way beyond. They start at 100,000. So you understand when you know, okay, how am I going to use that money? You know who you're going to talk to. And then once you know who you're going to talk to, you can make a clear budget and quantify how much money you need to get to that next level. How much money do I need to expand into Algeria, for example? I need to pay for an office. I need to pay for the registration fees. I need to pay somebody to recruit someone there. I need to have a machine there. I need to pay for a truck there. All right, I put this in a budget. I know that once I go there, because my activity in Egypt is already working, if I take a loan of 20,000, I'll be able to pay back. So I'm going to the bank. I'm explaining that I'm expanding there, and I'll be able to pay back with interest every month. You see, that is the mechanism. That is the process. Because then you're coming to the bank, you just don't say, I need money. You just say, I have a very clear plan. There is an opportunity in Nigeria that I saw. I can make much more money with it. And this is how much I need now and how much I'll be able to pay back every month. You are active in this process. You're not passive. And that is very important. So now let's go into a little bit deeper. What type of what the debt or loans, what can loans finance for you? Because banks can't finance everything. Again, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs come to me and say, oh, I need a website. If I have a website, I'll be able to sell my produce on an e-commerce platform. I'm going to the bank. No, the bank cannot finance technology solutions. It's very rare that they do that. Why? Because they can't see the future revenues that you'll be able to do with it. It is too risky for them. But there are products that banks really understand and that they're able to help you with. The first one is working capital. So again, you are a company that maybe is doing mostly trading. You are selling shoes. You import the shoes from India, for example, or from Turkey. You need to get an inventory of shoes so that you can sell them. The more inventory you have, the higher you can sell. But you don't have the money to pay the supplier upfront. That's what the bank is here for. The bank can help you pre-finance your inventory. And if the bank pre-finances the inventory, then you can be able to increase your revenues, because now instead of having 500 shoes, you have 5,000. So this is something that the banks understand, working capital. That is, then they can provide you with the working capital loan. Something else that the banks understand is client receivables. So you have a client that you're working, for example, with a big corporate, but the corporate doesn't pay upfront and they have the negotiating power. But what you do is that you invoice them, right? And they accept the invoice. They will be paying later. But you need the money now, because you need to be able to pay your inventory again. You need to be able to transform the produce so that then you can sell it to your corporate client. So that is what the bank can also finance. They can see that the client is going to pay $10,000. So they can pay it now. They know that you will get the money at some point. It is clear for them. And if your client is even a big client that they know, a big corporate that they know, you work with Carrefour or so on, then they're like, okay, we know this client, they're very reliable. We're going to give this invoice financing. That is another product that the bank understands. And finally, assets. Banks understand asset financing because then it provides the collateral that they want. It gives them something like a guarantee. In particular, the two assets that the banks really, really love is first vehicles, motor vehicles, anything like motorbikes or cars. And the second one is property. So anything like land or real estate. So those are assets that the bank particularly love, because it is easy for them, in case you default, to sell it back to the secondary market. However, any other assets such as machine financing or even solar panel financing, those kind of things, this is something that they can like, because there is an asset that is going to guarantee the loan. And they understand that, especially if it's a productive asset. So let's say you need to have a motorbike, because then you'll be able to deliver much more your produce. For example, if you deliver meals to households and you need a fleet of motorbikes, but you already have one or two, and with one or two, we can see that you're already making money. If you had 10, you'll make much more. Then that's where the bank can give you an asset financing loan. So those three products are products that the banks truly understand, and that then it fits into their mandate. They can just discuss with you the time that you need the loan, how long, how much are you able to repay, and so on. But don't come with this website's ideas, or even I need to recruit a person, then I take a loan for that. No. Try to understand your banker. If you put yourself in the shoes of your banker, you can win better than negotiations. So now, what are the advantages or disadvantages of raising debt? Big advantage is that at least you don't lose ownership. The bank is not a shareholder in your company. Just give you a loan, and then in exchange, you give the loan back plus the interest. So they don't have any control. They don't have any say in your company. They just it's just a transaction. All the interests that you pay on those loans, it reduces your net income at the end of the month. So, of course, it reduced the amount of taxes you're going to pay, because you're taxed on your net income. If it's 20% of your net income and your net income is lower, then you'll pay less tax. So that's another advantage of the loan. And then the good thing is that at least you can forecast. You will forecast your revenues, you will forecast your expense. So it gives you a clear plan and a clear direction. However, I know that some of the entrepreneurs are scared about that, because you feel that you really have to make money. It's a burden that you have to always have under your head, and you have to pay back. And if there's anything happening, like COVID hits, for example, and your shop is closed, or you have a political unrest and you can't sell. Bon, that's the issue of having the debt, because then you can default. But if the whole vision of the loan is to plan, you have to plan for the future and see if there are always events that you can plan for, but the more you plan, the higher the likelihood for you to be successful with your loan. Second type of funding, equity. So equity, as a reminder, it is when an investor comes and they take shares in your company. For example, I come and I tell you, I have 50,000 euros, but I want 20% of your company. So now you're not alone to make decisions, or you and your co-founder. It's you, your co-founder, and now this investor. He can or she can discuss your strategy. She can help you get access to more clients or more investors, but she's part of the whole funding team now. So what can those investors finance? Those are the ones that finance innovation, technology development. You show them that you have a product or a service that you're selling, and with an innovation that you've already prototyped somehow. So for example, in my situation, I wanted to build this sustainable finance platform. I already had a prototype, so I had drawings like graphism. I had also like what we call a minimum viable product. So I had a platform that was not maybe looking very good, but that was working and where SMEs were getting money. And now I go to the investor and I tell them, I can develop this innovation and make it much better, much faster, but I need 100,000 euros to be able to do that. So because then I will recruit technology talent so that we can develop our platform. That's what equity investors can do. Regulatory licensing. So this is particularly true for licenses, for example, in the agricultural sector on quality, or in the financial service sectors when it comes to banking license and so on. So when the regulator in a sector tells you you need a minimum of $1 million, for example, in your capital to get access to this license, this is what investors are keen on financing as well, because they know that once you have the license, you'll be able to operate in an environment where other people cannot compete against you unless they have the license. So it gives you an advantage, right? So those are those are the things that they're keen on financing. Finally, geographic expansion. So this one is quite interesting, because if you work really well, let's say in Morocco, you have a business that is flourishing in the agricultural sector. Maybe you cultivate olives and you export olives there, and you have identified that you could do the same in Tunisia. That is something that investors equity investors are very keen on financing, because they can see that they can see that you are already making money in Morocco. The model is working. Now you've done a market study in Tunisia. They can see you can make money in Tunisia, and you would grow now 2, 3, 4 times. Perfect. Then they can invest in you. So you see, it's very key for you to have in mind why you are fundraising, because then you can present really well to an investor why you are fundraising, how you will use the money, and how it will make you more successful. That's very important. Advantages and disadvantages of the equity side. So the big advantage, and that's why a lot of businesses really want to come and get equity, is because you don't get to repay every month, unlike the loan. So you don't have to give interest or anything like that. It's more like we give you the money, and then it's a long-term journey together. The issue maybe about that is that you could potentially lose control of your company because you have to provide your shares. So if an investor decides, okay, I'm done with this company, I want to sell it now to the highest bidder, and this new investor, you don't like them, well, unfortunately, you can't, you have very little recourse to discuss if you have not negotiated in advance. So this is where you have to be very careful about equity. Having an equity investor is like getting married, literally. This is someone that you will be working with in your company for years, maybe decades even. So you have to be very, very careful with whom you let in. Think that this is an opportunity for them to come into your company. Again, not you struggling and getting money. No, them getting an opportunity to get into a business that is growing, that is having a tremendous impact. So they also have to show you that they deserve it, right? So just to summarize on this part, we discussed about the importance for you to understand why you need to fundraise, why do you need that money, how you're going to use that money, and then what is exactly the budget that you need, so that then you can go to a bank or to an equity investor and explaining really, really, really well what will be the whole process and how you will be able to grow thanks to this financing. Before I get to the second section, is there any questions? I'm looking at the chat.
No, Melanie, there is no question, but I would like to raise a question to you. Because you say that potential entrepreneur interested in getting access to finance, bank or equity, they need to understand what they need, the size of the needs and so on. But one of the recurrent challenges that women-led business have is how to make these assessments, because this means that these assessments should also be done in the language that a bank or a potential investor could understand. So it's not just doing it, but how to do this. So it's also in terms of understand in which kind of language this kind of assessment and then the presentation of their need should be done. What is your opinion? Where are the most challenging elements in this? Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Absolutely. So this is actually something we'll cover in section 3 about how to structure your presentation and how to present it in the way that the investors understand. But I think the first element of talking the language is first to understand what can they finance. Because once you start and you come and you say, for example, I had someone coming to an investor pitch and she did a very good pitch. But then when an investor asked her, so how can we help you? What do you need? And she said, oh, but I need 7,000 euros to take an office. And he was like, but that's not what I can finance. That is, just go to the bank to finance this, or just sell more products so that you can cover those things. It's then you lost the conversation fully if you come to an investor and you haven't thought really well of what you need and how it fits with what the investor can do. Because understanding the language of your bank and the investor is first understanding what they can do for you. You can't go to a bakery and ask for meat. It's the same with finance. But indeed, Anna will go into details about then the key documentations and presentations that are needed so that it also fits and match their language. I hope I answered your questions.
Thank you very much. Go ahead. We will talk about it later on in the session. Go ahead. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So now in section 2, when is your business ready to fundraise? It's an important, once you have your understanding about why you need to fundraise and what are you going to use the money for, now it's to understand like, okay, am I ready? If an investor is coming tomorrow and tells me, okay, yes, I have 50,000 euros, but I need this, and this, can I provide those documentations to him or her? So let's dig into the details. So first, when it comes to a loan, and unfortunately, it has to be very clear with where you're getting the loan, because banks have very specific processes. So I'm going to discuss about banks, but then there are also alternative lenders, especially in microfinance or in the mobile money space, at least for the African side that I know, where you can get a bit some bypass around it. But in general and traditionally, a bank will need to understand your personal history. So did you have a career? Did you get do you get revenues? Do you get, are you part of a family where your husband, for example, is also generating for the household? And how does it, what is the entire cash flow and credit history on a personal level? Then they look at the business history. So then just focusing on your business. Has your business got loans before? Have you managed to pay back the loans? What were the previous revenues before, and so on and so forth. So personal history and then business history. Finally, they look at projections, cash flows. So are you able to maybe plan a little bit how much you can be able to do every month? It doesn't need to be exact, because we don't see the future, but given what I've done in January last year, I know approximately what I can do this January. Given the contracts that I have negotiated with my clients, I can expect, or I can plan what I can receive as revenues next month, and so on and so forth. So what I always tell my my fellow entrepreneurs is that as much as it is an ancient system, the banks have certain processes where if you only operate cash, for example, it can be a bit more difficult to get access to certain loans. So anything that can be relevant, be it mobile money, be it bank accounts, just so that you can have traceability of your transactions as much as possible, it will be helpful and it will increase your likelihood for you to get a loan. And as I said, for the banks, what will be the key, let's say, products that they understand is products where they can see the future cash flows, such as working capital, where you need to maybe get a little bit more inventory, but then once you sell this inventory, they can see that you'll be able to have more revenues and pay back the loans. Clients' receivables, as I said, where you can see, like, even solar panels are always a good way to show. Or you can see if you install, if your client pays you, then you'll be able to pay back the invoice financing. And finally, the asset financing, where when you get this machine, you can see that you can increase your revenues and then being able to pay back the loans again. For equity, as I said, it's a bit different, because an equity investor wants to see growth. They want to see that they join the adventure with you today in 2022, but in 2030, you'll have 5 times more employees. Your revenues would have multiplied by 10 or 20. You are now expanded in different countries. So for them, they need to understand the growth potential. So you need to have first what we call a minimum viable product. I gave you an example with Melanie Capital earlier. A minimum viable product, even if it's not a technology product, it could be, I have oranges, I want to transform it into juice and export it to the European markets, for instance. And my minimum viable product there is that I may have 2 trees and I have a machine that is manual, but my juice is very high quality. It is organic. It is maybe like with a better packaging and so on. And I can sell it directly to Carrefour. and I can show that I have already sold it and my customers are happy. That is a minimum viable product. It doesn't always have to be in the technology space. It can be also in the brick and mortar space. And for that is just to show an investor, look, there's an opportunity. Literally, people are asking for it. I have a market. If you come in, we can grow exponentially. Second thing is what the proven traction with your minimum viable product. So it can be sales. It's better if it's sales. It can be also surveys. So for instance, now we're talking about clothing. Let's say you are building your own brand. Your minimum viable product is that you have 2 dresses that you have prototyped, and you already have pre-orders of, I don't know, 100 people. That's proven traction. You have not yet sold the dress, you have not yet shipped the dress, but you have clear interest from a large number of people that will want to buy those dresses. So that's the traction. And that's what investors see as a good signal, because they think, okay, so there's already clients that want this product. So once I come as an investor and we can actually manufacture a lot of dresses, then she will be able to expand her company exponentially. Finally, a robust business plan. So Ada was talking about how we can speak the language to the investor, provide them with what they need to make the investment decision. A business plan is one of them. So a business plan nowadays can be a little bit lighter, so it doesn't need to be 100 pages Word document. You can have a PowerPoint, so presentation with 5 to 10 slides, just presenting what you're doing. So let's take the closing example that I have, showing the dress that you have designed, the markets that you're addressing. Are you focusing on moms? Are you focusing on young girls? Are you focusing on the elderly? And what is the price? What is your strategy to sell it? Do you want to export it? Do you want to focus on the local market? Will you use distributors? Will you use e-commerce and so on? So you have to explain this into different slides. And it can be very visual so that you don't have to spend weeks and weeks focusing on it. And then a big part of that business plan is just the financial planning. How much do I need now to make it work? And how much can I expect revenues? I expect 100 clients in that city, 200 in that other city. I will expand here in January, here in June next year, and so on. So just to have a clear pathway of your growth, of the sales, so that then you can show it to the investor, show the expenses, and show how they will be able to make money. Any questions maybe on that section? So we discussed specifically about like the pre-requirements that you need before you go there. So for the loans, it's mostly, okay, I know that I need a loan for my working capital. I'm just going to the bank and I have already had a loan before. I can show my history. I can show that I've made money with it or that I can make money with it. And now I'm going to the bank just to present my case and present to them how I'll be able to pay back the loan. On the equity side, it's more about, I have a brilliant idea. I've already put it together. I already have pre-orders, or I already have sold a little bit with my minimum viable product. But now my business plan is showing me how I can expand and how I can get to a higher growth thanks to an equity investment. Is there any questions from the audience or maybe from the team?
Melanie, yes, I would like to intervene.
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. It's been very insightful and interesting. I would have a question. We also encourage, of course, everyone here to raise their hands or write in the chat in French or English, because I think it's a great opportunity to understand more. My question is out of curiosity for the work you do at Melanie Capital. because I've seen that many elements and documents are required as well. So in a practical way, do you also, how do you give assistance maybe with technical training, or how can you help local women entrepreneurs, for example, to draft a robust business plan that can actually work in this financial context? So how is it in a more practical way? Thank you.
Sure. You're most welcome. I can just jump very, very quickly on that. So very practically at Melanie Capital, we have 2 ways to support women, and we mostly do it through this technology platform. So we have a pathway where we have a specific score on whether you are credit ready or investor ready, and we ask specific questions that the banks and the investors have asked us. So we know the process, we know the criteria, and we've put all the different questions there and all the different documents that they need. But most of the time we see that women entrepreneurs are having difficulties to maybe answer the questions or provide the documentations. So we provide with live masterclasses or with recorded masterclasses, specific aspects about the platform and about the process and how they can be eligible. So to give you an example on financial statements, if there is an investor that asks for it, we have a specific course on financials, we have an accounting tool, and then we have an advisor that is specific on accounting, and where entrepreneurs can then go on the platform and book a meeting with our advisor at any point in time. We also have like peer-to-peer support. So then through the club, the entrepreneurs can come and connect with the other entrepreneurs to also support each other and help on those specific aspects. We have different, let's say, approaches according to whether we are fundraising for a bank or fundraising for a private equity investor. So for banks, the process is it's much quicker, because the banks just ask for a specific data on the history and specific aspects about the future cash flows and the ability to repay the loan. So there we support the women specifically to get the right registration documents, because that's oftentimes an issue, the right tax compliance documents. So we say, in the platform, they can say which document they need. If they don't understand, we have a masterclass that helps them to understand, okay, this is this form and this is where you can get it in your country, and this is the process. And if it's not enough, then they can be linked to a specific tax advisor that is that has SME rates, let's say, so that doesn't overcharge, and that they can get, so that they can be eligible on that end. So that's for the bank. Then for the equity side, it requires a bigger approach. So we even have a Melanie Capital Foundation that then provides programs and one-on-one mentoring to really builds the financial model, builds the pitch deck together, even coach on the presentation. How can you be confident to pitch in 5 minutes your business, and so on and so forth. So that's the concrete approach that we take at Melanie Capital.
Thank you very much. Very insightful. I think the factor of confidence is something very essential as well, that sometimes often actually women lack. So I think it's a great work. Thanks to you. So everyone here is encouraged to ask questions in the chat or raise your hands in French and English. But yes, please, Melanie, we can go on, and we will see future questions afterwards. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much, and thank you for your question. So now discussing about section 3, we're going to put ourselves in the shoes of the investor and understand their business side. It's very important because it helped me so much in my fundraising, understanding what is the process, how do the committees work, what do they have to go through internally, because then you can anticipate their questions, anticipate their concern, and make sure to position yourself in the best way possible for them. So you have to understand that a lender has a very different perspective from an equity investor. From a lender perspective, what's their biggest fear is how do I get my money back? If I give you the loan, am I going to get my loan back at some point? Are you going to make enough money to pay my interest? Or how am I going to not make any mistake into the future? Like, am I going to assess properly how you're going to make cash flows in the future? So when you know that your bank is going to think like that, of course, the thing that you're going to present first and foremost, after you present your amazing idea, is to show them how you're making money on a monthly basis and how you're making more money to pay back not only the loan, but the interest. Because you know that's what they're only interested about. As a banker, my main performance is assessed because I have given a lot of loans, I have gotten back those loans with interest. That is my two key performance indicator. So if I've given out a lot of loans, I've already done half of my job. But if I don't get my loans back, I don't get my bonus. It's as simple as that. So when I come as an entrepreneur, as much as I want to appeal to the interest of the banker, I want to make sure he or she understands that I'm going to be able to pay back on a monthly basis. The equity investors, for them, it's a bit different because the way that they are making money is by buying shares and then selling shares. So they don't really want to know how you're making money on a monthly basis yet because they don't need the money already. But what they need to know is if they will be able to sell your shares in, let's say, 5 years, at a higher price. So I come, for example, I used to invest, especially in financial services. So for those who knows Enda Microfinance in Tunisia, I invested in Enda as an equity investor. So we invested, for example, at a value of like €100 per share. The idea was like after 5 years, we multiply this by 10. We sell it at €1,000 per share. For this, Enda would need to grow also 10 times or at least 5 times. So what we're going to look at is, all right, if I put my money today, are you going to grow 5 times, 10 times so that in 5 years I can sell it back? So they're looking for exponential growth, which is why I always explain to entrepreneurs and I insist, why are you fundraising and where is it going to get you? Because if you cannot show that you're going to multiply by 5, by 7, by 10, don't waste your time with an equity investor. The bank can support you. It's better to go to a bank asking for 20,000 than trying to get 20,000 for any equity investor, because it's not their business model. An investor will not make enough money if they just give you 20,000. So again, it's very important to understand your audience so that you can fit their mandate. In general, investors will support growth, what we call growth startup or growth businesses, and banks will support small businesses. What is the difference between the two? A small business would be something that would see as maybe a bit more human focused. So let's say I am an accountant and I provide accounting advice. So I need to be here to provide the service. I am me as a human. It's not a machine that is doing it, right? It's not a robot. It's not a tech platform. So what is the most important and the recommendation I ask for this? It's for you to get capital, get a co-founder that maybe has a very high, that can put money in the company, but also can have a strong network. So in the case of an accountant, maybe I go to see an accountant from KPMG or EY that I trust or that I could trust. And then they will bring a lot of value to my accounting firm because they have a huge network, huge experience, and they can put a little bit of money so that we can buy laptops, we can have an office, we can, you see, at the beginning. But if it's the same, like I sell again clothes, this is something that maybe could be high growth at some point if I have a factory and I produce and so on. But if I just maybe trade, so I need to be there and I need to procure the dresses and then sell it to the shop. Maybe what is best at the moment, if I need money, is again to have someone who has a lot of contacts in the textile industry, or someone that has a lot of contacts into the distributorship industry, or to go to the bank, basically. A growth startup is then something that has a scalable technology, not only digital technology, but also machinery, for example. It's really a business that can scale, where today, even if you have the same amount of people, you're 10 today, but you're getting the machine, you're going to be able to produce 100 times more without recruiting a lot of people. You see my point? So if I would be 10, but to produce 100, I need to be 50, then I fall into the small business definition. But if I am 10, I get a machine and now I can produce 150 units more, then it's scalable. And then I can get an equity investor. I hope that part is clear. Took me a while to understand as well. At the beginning, we started Melanie Capital as a financial advisory firm, and we realized that through financial advisory, we could not get exponential growth and equity because we needed financial advisors to provide the support. But now with the platform, now that we have put together a digital platform, then now we don't need to have a lot of people. We can just be who we are. And we've already have the documentation, we have the recording of the master classes, we have everything. So now we can get as many SMEs, but with the same people. So we can make more money with the same people. So that's how you see it, and how you can juggle, or how you can move to one box to one definition to another. But again, there's not one that is better than the other. It just depends on what type of investors you're targeting, what type of objectives you have for your company, and so on and so forth, and what you are comfortable working with, basically. Now, when you talk to the investor or to the bank, you have to understand that they have a mandate. A mandate means that they are legally having an obligation to fulfill certain criteria. For instance, Atijari Egypt can lend in Egypt. They can't lend to you somewhere else. At least from the transactions that I've known, there can be exceptions, but it's rare. An investor, an equity investor that has, that already have a focus on the Eastern African region will not come finance you in Tunisia, even if it's an African investor. You have to really dig deeper and look very clearly about where they focus. Do they have a specific sector they want to focus? Do they want to focus on women, especially where you will have an advantage? Do they want to focus on really small startups or bigger companies? This one is also very important. How much can you see they're investing? Do they start at 100,000? Do they start at 1 million? Because I had a lot of businesses that came to me and say, oh, I went to the World Bank, tried to get money, but they didn't give me. The World Bank usually starts at $2 million investments. You can't go with your request of 50,000. They cannot help you. They can not even legally help you. So very, very, very important for you to look at the investor. Do your own due diligence on your investor or your banker. Now, how is the process usually? So an investor or a banker, for them, the idea is that they see a lot of different companies so that they can choose the ones that fits the best their mandate and fits the best their criteria. So usually they start from a first point of contact where you explain a bit your business and so on, and they say, oh, why? This is interesting. It piques my interest. Let's go have an initial meeting. Let's have a whole pitch about it with the rest of the team. So now this is where you come, hopefully with a slide presentation, be very professional, and for 10, 15 minutes, you present what you do, you present the opportunity, you present how you can be able to pay back the loan or how you can be able to grow exponentially, and you present how much you need to be able to get to the next level. If they are interested, then they go towards what we call a preliminary eligibility check. So they check if you're eligible, if you are from the geographies that they're looking at, if you are if the amount is eligible from what they can do, if you have, they will check if you have any links with money laundering or with terrorism. If you don't, and normally you don't, the idea is to go to the next level, which is the due diligence. The due diligence is where they start assessing, evaluating the numbers, the documentation, like the processes. So that's why it's important, and I really, really insist, although it is very time-consuming, putting everything on paper is important. Having a document, for example, that explains how you transform olive in olive oil, how you transform your orange in orange juice, how you are designing your dresses and selling it. What is the logistic pathway? Do you have a table about the different clients you have? Everything that you can explain on paper will help during that phase of due diligence. It doesn't need to look very good. It doesn't need to look fancy. Just needs to explain to somebody, this is our policies, this is our process, this is how we do business, and this is why it works. Because then those bankers and those financiers who have no idea about entrepreneurship, who most probably have never had a business themselves, they can just immerse themselves into what you do, and they can put themselves into your shoes, try to understand and see, okay, this is indeed an opportunity. This is indeed a business that works. This is something where we can come in. After the due diligence, if they are agreeing to move forward with the loan or with the investment, you'll usually have a legal negotiation because an investment is half of it is money, half of it is legal. So in the legal negotiation, you will discuss about the rights, you will discuss about the duration, you will discuss about if it's an equity investor, like what kind of control they have. If it's a loan financing, then you'll discuss about the terms, the pricing, the timing, and so on and so forth. And finally, the disbursement, where you get the money into your account and you can start working. So how you would check your eligibility, and that's something that we do on the platform. We kind of check whether your credit score, based on the history that you had, based on the loans that you had before, the revenues, the expenditure behavior that you have, we can show you like what kind of credit score you could have at the bank and how you can improve it. Collateral and guarantees, that is only for banks, not for equity. But a lot of banks can ask for specific collateral. So you have to check beforehand if it is required and what kind of collateral is required and can you comply with it. The other thing is time in business. So meaning like, can you check if the bank is looking for businesses that have a minimum of 1 year, a minimum of 2 years? Just make sure that at least you have in mind this criteria so that you don't lose your time with people that cannot finance you on just that basis. And finally, the annual revenues. So I had some of my entrepreneurs lately who stopped generating anything for the past 6 months and then wanted a loan. It's going to be very difficult, even as an equity investor, to come if we don't see any activities for 6 months. you need to have already like this ability to generate a bit of revenues and showing what you're expecting so that they see the potential. Because again, investors or bankers are not charities. They need to see the potential for them to make money so that they can get their own bonus. So just try to make sure you speak this language. In terms of documentation, as I said, lenders compared to equity investors have a bit of a lighter requirements. What we look at Melanie Capital specifically is the registration documentations, the tax identifications or tax compliance. If your business needs licenses, so that's quite key, especially if you are not allowed to perform your activities if you are not licensed, or if you don't have a permit, because then the bank cannot finance you, or an equity investor would not finance you, because that's basically illegal activities. And finally, they would look at cash flow statements, bank statements. They can ask for financials, but nowadays a lot of banks function with just bank statements. At Melanie Capital, we even have an accounting tool that helps you from your bank statements to create financial statements so that you can start to also go towards bigger banks. And once you have bigger needs, you can get a bigger loan. For equity investors, you would need that, what the lenders need, but on top of that, you need more information. Most of the time, a pitch deck. So what we call a pitch deck is just basically this presentations that explains your vision, your strategy, your products, and then your projections. So that's something that I agree is not easy to do. Incubators can usually help you with this. At Melanie Capital, we have templates and advisors that can help you with this. But it's quite key because it is the first interaction with an equity investor is to present to them your idea and try to make them appeal to what you're doing thanks to this presentation. Then they look also into different legal documentations. How do you have a board? Who are the shareholders officially of the company? How they can identify the different clients through different contracts you have. So they really, since it's, as I said, a bit of a marriage, they really want to know how everything is working, what are the different responsibilities that you have within the company. And now, this is the last section, and to just discuss like, okay, so now how do you get started and how do you fundraise? What's the process? What are the key steps? How do you go about it, basically? The first step is to research your investors. There are some stories where you bump into an investor and you get this opportunity. Those stories are very rare. I can tell you, like, as a CEO, I've contacted more than 800 investors. It is really, really time consuming, but once you're motivated and you know that you have the right project, you already have understood how much you need, why do you need that money, how this money is going to take you, you are ready, my dear, to go and research for investors. A very good strategy to research for investors is also to ask for referrals. You're working now with UNIDO. Maybe there are some UNIDO's partners that are investors. So now it is the opportunity for you to ask also the L'Union de la Méditerranée, okay, do you have any investors that you could refer us to? Can you make us any recommendations and so on? Investors need to trust you to give you the money. So it's always better that if you are referred to someone that they trust, because then they will extend this trust to you. You can also use online communities. I really strongly recommend for you to understand social media. Twitter or LinkedIn are extremely powerful networks that we are using nowadays to fundraise. I was yesterday having a panel at the Mairie de Paris in France, and there was this other entrepreneur from Cameroon, and she raised $8 million. She was also saying that with her Twitter, she started to tweet a lot about what she was doing, and she got investors just directly coming to her asking, oh, this is amazing what you're doing. I'm following you about what you do on Twitter. Are you fundraising? Would like to invest in your company. I personally use LinkedIn. And I post a lot about what I do and how I see what is my vision and so on, what is the mission of my company. And I really oftentimes have investors coming to me and asking, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Are you fundraising? So it's very important for first to be seen, to exist in those platforms, and second, to connect with those platforms. Because with COVID, a lot of investors are no longer even needing to travel into those countries. They connect a lot online. So it's an opportunity you should not pass away. I show you, for example, how I do it on LinkedIn. So this is my LinkedIn profile. I go into my network. Most of the time, I just type investor, actually. Even I can put more specificities, angel investor, private equity investor. You see here, I have 700,000 results. I can then filter it even into, for example, my first connection. So those are people that already connected with me. They're part of my network or part of my friends, let's say. I only have 459 results then. It really narrows down. Then I can go into second connections. So those are the connections of my connections. And now I get 98,000 connections. The third connections is like, it's the connections of my connections of my connections. You get? So this is how it works. And then I can filter it out into geographies, for example, because we are based in Nairobi in Kenya. I can see, okay, who are the connections of my connections of my connections in Kenya? And this helps me filter out to 700 results and then really target my messaging. I can then also do it in Germany because we're also based in Frankfurt. And this way I get even more connections. You get and more results to connect with investors. That is a very powerful tool because look, you can talk to people you would have never bumped into a conference or that you would have never talked to sometimes, I kid you not, I can spend 1 or 2 days a week just connecting with those people and sending them messages. Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm having this business. We have managed to generate X number of revenues so far. We have a platform that have X number of clients, and now we are fundraising 500,000 euros because we want to expand our technology platform. We want to launch a new product on mobile phones. We want to expand in French-speaking Africa, blah, 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 blah. So really trying to express where we are, why we're fundraising, how much do we need, how they can come in, and that we need to talk on the phone. And that's the first point of contact that you need to get to the next step that we saw in the process, which is the pitch. So that's a very concrete way of how I research investors. I personally have very, very low network, and we didn't start as an incubator. So we had to use what we had at our disposal, LinkedIn. And this is very powerful. On Twitter, I'm not as much as an expert, but what people do most of the time, they just tweet about what they do, how it works, how it's going, and so on and so forth. But honestly, LinkedIn is extremely good and extremely efficient to find people, connect with them, and have discussions. Then once you get to that step where you are talking to investors and you're having meetings, you now have to sell your business and you have to sell your initiatives. And the first tip that I really, really always recommend to entrepreneurs is like, the first thing to watch out is attitude. Attitude, attitude, attitude. You're coming to sell an opportunity. You're not here because you're struggling or you're having difficulties, you need money, la, la, la. No. The money that you need is because you're going to expand, you're going to provide these investors with the money they're looking for, the profit they're looking for. Also, a lot of investors are coming into the Middle East and Africa for impact as well. So you're going to showcase how you're changing the communities, how you're changing the world, even with your idea. But very important to come as an opportunity and not just as charity. Second part, practice your pitch. We're just talking about it just earlier about the confidence and about presentation. But that is key. Even me, every time I have to speak in public, I stress out. It's very stressful to have to talk to someone you don't know, to have to sell your business. It took me time, but sometimes you really have to push yourself, even if you think that you're not good enough, if you think that your business is not yet there. Well, what you think is not good enough might be what someone sees as a potential, and you need to change your mindset about it. If you manage to do it this far, if you manage to generate money this far, don't you think this is an opportunity that other people would be excited to join? That's what you have to come as an attitude and as a mindset when you pitch your business. Because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. And the more you put yourself out there, you pitch to your family, you pitch to your cousins, you pitch to your friends, you pitch to your neighbors. You start now pitching to people you don't know. You start to pitch to other business people like me on LinkedIn, maybe people like Unido. You start to always tell your story, and this will make it much more natural than when you meet an investor. But you need to go out there. You need to try it from the mirror to the foreigner, to the foreign person that's across the street, so that you can feel comfortable and get the confidence you need to ace your fundraising. And finally, a very key thing is to show how as much structure and order as possible. The more you can show that you have things on paper, you've already documented, you have your invoices sorted, you already have the registrations and so on in a folder online, it helps your case. It helps to move the fundraising further. I always regret sometimes when I go to an investor and they say, okay, can you send me this document by tomorrow? And I have to work overnight because I don't have it. It's always difficult. But now that you have in mind and you have platforms now like Melanie Capital that can help you structure your business, you have ideas of like what would be demanded beforehand. So it's better that you prepare and you have structure so that then you can make a good impression and show professionalism to your investor. Just to finish on my experience, I think I've touched about it a little bit, but the key things that I really wanted to share about being an investor and looking at different SMEs is that the biggest issue is a lot of SMEs have not done, a lot of entrepreneurs have not done their due diligence on me as an investor before. They haven't checked if I could invest into their location. They haven't checked if I could invest the amount they're looking for the product they're looking for. That's why I really always do this first introduction course about how to understand your investor, because even if you have the best pitch or the best documents, if you haven't researched about the investor and you haven't checked what are the criteria, then it's very difficult for them to help you. And that's why, for example, at Melanie Capital, we have this matching criteria where we take the criteria of the investor and we only present on the investor dashboard the companies that match the criteria, because otherwise it's a waste of their time. They get frustrated and you will get very negative feedback for no reason. And when you fundraise, the least you need is negative feedbacks for no reason. You already get feedbacks maybe that would be difficult to take in from investors that can fit into your business. So you don't need other people that would have nothing to do with your activities to give you negative feedback. You really don't need that. And I told you how I did it at Melanie Capital to fundraise. I don't despair. It's true that it's not easy, and it's a bit soul crushing sometimes, but there's always someone out there that is interested in what you do. And you need to, if you believe in your idea and if you believe in what you do and the importance of what you do and how much it's important for your family and so on, you go out there and you keep trying and you keep asking questions. You get a no, you said, oh, thank you so much. I understand that you can't invest in my business. Maybe you can explain to me why, because then you understand, you learn, and you move. So yeah, really, that's the key aspect I wanted to deliver today, is to keep pushing, keep growing, and use the tools that you have at your disposal, especially social media. We've already discussed about the Melanie Capital platform, so now I think I can take the last 10 minutes that we have to maybe take questions and discuss a bit more about maybe the concrete problems that you may have, and so on and so forth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Really, I have to say that each time I learn more from you. I think you stress something that for me is very important, meaning that from one side, efforts from women entrepreneurs looking for funds should deploy in terms of better focus, better target the research for funders. And from the other side, I wanted to ask you, beside the efforts, beside good preparation, beside using the right languages, beside being structured, beside doing networking, how much do you think that when a women entrepreneurs go outside and apply for a fund, the gender stereotypes have an impact on the final success of her application? In your personal experience, do you think that the gender stereotype have still relevant weight, or the investors are more interested in good investment without any gender references?
Thank you so much, Anna, for that question. It's a very, very important question. I think that I want to be very positive on this. It's true that there are still gender stereotypes, definitely. And I think it will take time before gender stereotypes completely disappear. However, I can see that there's a lot of positive movements that are happening when it comes to gender. Now there's a huge focus on gender inclusivity from the investor side. And you had me talking about it in Vienna on Tuesday. We now have the 2X challenge criteria, which is this framework that really focuses only on women. And at Melanie Capital, for example, we have a specific facility that focuses only on women entrepreneurs. So then it means that gender is actually a huge advantage to get access to those facilities that are most of the time loans that are cheaper or that don't require collateral, and so on and so forth. And that's where I want to emphasize as well the importance of doing the research on the investors or the banks before. Because if you know that an investor focuses specifically on women, or a bank specifically has a facility for women or products for women, this is where you have a huge advantage compared to your male counterpart. So you should get that confidence and should have the trust that then this would be easier for you to get that financing, and then go for it, because that is a financing that is specifically targeted towards you. So those pieces of information are not always easy to find. You need to make the research. You need to look at, now I'm going to also share my screen to make sure that I can also give a concrete way for you to look at those things. You go on Google, you look for the 2X challenge criteria, all right? 2X challenge criteria here, and you can find specifically businesses or companies that are focusing on women. Here, like they are founding members, there are different memberships, and those ones are mostly development financial institutions. But even there, you can go into their websites, look at which bank they finance, look at which programs they have. Today, there's a lot of even incubation programs that are focused on women, and then that provides funding at the end, what we call gender lens funding. So yes, Anna, there are still stereotypes that are waiting on the investments, but I like to not think about it so much and focus on the positive, because as a woman, I entrepreneur, I truly believe I deserve to get that financing, and I know that I can deliver returns to investors. And I truly believe that investors are still very interested in returns, even if it's led by a woman. So now I'm focusing on that aspect, focusing on selling this, and focusing also with the investors that are particularly convinced that as a woman CEO, I can deliver even much growth. And that's why I talk a lot with gender investors.
Thank you very much. Indeed, you're right. There is more attention and focus on, let's say, women entrepreneurship, also from financial investment actors. It's true that sometimes the risk on having something similar to the greenwashing, meaning the gender washing, is there. But let's use all the means and tools available to go ahead. And I don't see on the chat any question. There is also Tana. Thank you for your insightful and beneficial presentation. I agree with that. If there is any of you that want to raise a specific question or even to share your own experience in terms of access to potential investors. Yes, Madame Boutouba. Yes, you raise the hand, you can intervene. I think you are going to speak in French.
Yes, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Madame Anna.
Well, thanks so much, Melanie Keita from Collateral. I really wanted to thank the representative for this quality of the presentations on the many different financial access modalities, gender with the gender legs in the economic area. I would like actually, and as it was mentioned by the EPM, the possibility to leave to some recommendation appropriation, that is these conclusions that the speaker would have liked to include in the working documents for the Union of the Mediterranean, using this, because we are envisaging to organize regional exchanges in this section of the ministerial conference of the and the 26, 27 October in Madrid and Spain, we will be organizing. And so I'd like to take the advantage of the opportunity to mention the UFM and to invite to really streamline the conclusions of this type of meetings, and to invite international partners and to the UNIDO and the contribution in promoting in this sustainability in the Mediterranean and the inclusion of women and the capacity building of finance, access to finance, and promoting the possibility within the Mediterranean basin, but also to cross-section streamline this issue in the development, social and economic development after the COVID. So, Anna, I would like to give the floor to our distinguished guest speaker to tell us a little bit how can we have access to the documents in terms of entrepreneurship, financial proposals or possibilities that are being used within the region, especially in the southern shore of the Mediterranean, from the financial, technical, and economical perspectives that are having these difficulties as opposed to all the rest of the Mediterranean. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Batuba, and have mentioned the adoption of a new ministerial declaration to defend this declaration that is going to be followed by the implementation or an action plan that will be implemented. And I confirm that in this ministerial declaration, there's a focus on access to financial sources within the region. And to answer your question, as far as the results of the debates we had in the Women Business Forum and all the materials that were presented by Melanie today, all these materials together with this masterclass, the next masterclass, the documents will be part of a report that will be published by the Union for the Mediterranean. And all the documents that have been shared by Melanie are also being included, but I would like to give the floor to Melanie if ever she wants to say something regarding the possibility of having access to all the information she has been sharing today. Melanie, have the floor. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much, Mr. Baduba. Yeah, I would be delighted actually to have the follow-up by Mel with all the documents required, not only by sharing all the reference documents developed by telling you a little bit more about which are our actions regarding that. It will be really a great pleasure to share this with you. Thank you very much for your question, your request, rather. Okay, I'll trying to read all comments on the chat. Already said it, so thank you very much to have confirmed our. Thank you very much for having invited me. It was a real great pleasure. Thank you very much for having shared all your contact details for everyone. Hopefully, we'll be able, within other activities organized by the Union for the Mediterranean, hopefully, I can see, well, I can see the same thing from our colleagues from UNIDI. So, with regards to the participation to these, now we will
be a break of 30 minutes and there will be the next session starting at 12, where there will be more specifically on focus from the perspective of a female capital venture based in Jordan and working specifically in the region. And Jenny, who is the, our guest speaker, she will present what can be done to be sure that an investment fund could invest on women-led business, always take into account that, of course, we are talking about small businesses or growth startup. Of course, this is the difference that you were mentioning. And often there is one of the big challenges for the region. Thank you again to everybody. Stay online. Merci, Melanie. Thank you so much. Thank you to the interpreter too. Thank you for being with us. And we hopefully will see you again in 30 minutes for the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
had a nice break in the last 30 minutes after our first session. I don't know if you can hear me, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yes, perfect.
Yes, sorry, thank you. So I was saying good morning again. Thanks for those who stay with us even after the break, and welcome to the ones that join us now. Just a short reminder for those who joined after the break. This session will last 1.5 hours. We will have the presentation of our guest speakers, and you will have the translation available in English, French, and Arabic. You can post your question on the chat, but you can also raise your hand and take the floor via audio and video. Today, we will have the possibility to listen in the second part, in the second workshop, the perspective from a gender female investors after the session of this morning, where our expert Melanie Keita explained what is needed from the women-led business when preparing a request for fund, depending on the type of investor, depending on the type of activities, and so on. So we were pleased to introduce now our expert, that is Mrs. Jenny Hatou Aslen. I hope I pronounced it well, the name. I'm going to share just a short presentation of her profile, so everybody will be happy to meet her. I hope you can see the screen. Sorry. Jenny is co-founder and partner at Hammam Venture, a gender-less impact fund in the Middle East. She has a deep, long experience in investment management, and she has been featured among the top women in the venture capital in MENA region. And she was also prior investment principal at Silicon Valley, a venture capital fund investing in tech-enabled ventures. Technology is one of the most growing sector also in the region, so it would be interesting to have her view on this. And she was also head of asset management at ORAC Investment. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Jenny. Jenny, are you with us? Yes, perfect. I see you now. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna. I appreciate the opportunity to come and be with you here today on this session. I have to admit it was rather last minute, so I probably am not as well prepared as the previous presenter having a presentation, but I'm hoping that we can have a conversation around what we as an investor are looking for when we make investments. We are a gender lens investment fund, like Anna mentioned. I know that we have 1.5 hours, but I think I really want to start off by telling you a little bit about who I am. Obviously, I am based in Jordan, Amman, Jordan, but I'm not from Jordan. I am originally from Sweden. I met my husband, my Jordanian husband, on a beach in Africa, in Gambia, in 2003, and I fell in love. I followed my heart, and I ended up in Jordan. I've been here since 2006, and I've been working in different investment roles ever since. I was on the public market in asset management, and I've spent 5 years in venture capital. And yes, I've looked at quite a few tech startups and assessing them from that perspective. And it was probably around the Me Too movement that happened in 2017, 2018. We started having conversations with female entrepreneurs, because in our investment fund at the time, they had only made one female investment into a female founder. So I was like, what's happening? This can't be right. You know, we need to do something about this. Let's start talking to these women and see what are their challenges, what they're facing when they come and they approach an investor like this venture capital fund. So we met probably with 70, 80 different female entrepreneurs. And I remember going very clearly back to my boss at the time, and I was like, look, this is a really interesting opportunity to fund and support these women. But a lot of them are not necessarily building the same type of companies that a venture capital fund would be looking to invest into. I'll explain that a little bit later. But essentially, we set out on this journey to create Amam Ventures. I'm sure that there's several Arab speakers on the call, and Amam is Arabic for future or forward or coming up. So with this fund, we want to put more women and promote more women and push more women into becoming entrepreneurs and to become managers of their own companies, to help them become and put more women into senior management positions, and also to help more women come into the workforce, because you all know that we live in the most gender unequal region on the planet. So I am not the only one in Amam Ventures. We are 3 co-founders, myself, Tamara Abdel Jaber, and Fida Taher, and we all come from different backgrounds. I come from the investment side. Tamara has had her own strategy and management consultancy firm, and Fida is a tech entrepreneur. So we have like different complementary backgrounds, if you will. So I thought about today, I want to talk to you a little bit about what our experiences have been. I want to raise and shed some light on the importance of knowing the potential investor that you're going to be approaching. I think it's important that you understand the investment process, what it looks like, and what you need to do in order for you to be ready. I'm happy to share some experiences as well in terms of what has worked and what hasn't worked. And I realize that I'm going to be, I'm the only person that you're going to be talking to and listening to and seeing for the next hour or so. So I'm more than happy to take little breaks in between if you want to ask any questions in the meantime. Because at the end of the day, I would prefer if this is an interactive session. If any questions that comes up, I'm here for the next hour and a half. So if you do have questions, just shoot them across to me in the chat, or just put your camera on, and I guess Anna can help moderate that. So we are an impact fund that invests with a gender lens. That means that we follow something called the 2X criteria. And the 2X criteria is set up a few years ago, and it's essentially 4 different things. If you're not familiar with it, it's either the company needs to have a female founder, or it needs to have at least, for us, 35% of women in senior management, or they have to have at least 35% of women in the workforce, or they need to have a product or service that specifically caters to or services women. So I think we extend funding in terms of a different type of funding instrument. I'll probably get to that a little bit later as well. But our ticket sizes is usually between $250,000 up to $1 million. We provide funding, but we also provide capacity building support. So it's the money, but also a lot of other components that goes alongside with it, whether it is a business coach, whether it's help with marketing, whether it is help with digital marketing, social media, whatever it is specific for them, we would help out and support on that front. But I think also if we're talking about going and approaching an investor, I think it's very important to start off by saying that raising funds, external funds from external investors, this isn't for everyone. It's not everyone goes out and raises money from VC. I think less than like 2% or less than 1% of all companies in the world actually go out and raise funds and are able to secure funds from VCs, right? So I think it's important to let that sink in a little bit, that the great majority of companies out there that are doing very well and that are growing and expanding, they don't raise money from a funding or an investor like us. And that's okay, right? I don't think it's don't feel like a failure if you don't manage to raise from these type of entities, because there's plenty of companies who carry on perfectly fine without it. Their growth is not going to be as fast, or they're not going to be able to grow as large, but they can still manage to do perfectly okay. So a lot of different venture capital funds. I mean, there's different types, obviously. If you talk about angel investors, they typically manage their own money. A family office manages the money of a family. But if you go coming to a venture capital fund, and most funds, they are an asset manager. So that means that we manage other people's money. And that means, in effect, that we need to have a process, and we need to have a fiduciary duty to be able to do the proper due diligence on the companies and the entrepreneurs that we meet before we make and we complete the transaction. Now, because there's always a lot of, there's always the complaint that investors are very slow, that it takes a very long time. But that also means that there is this process that needs to be followed, and I'll share with you the way that our process works later on. And something else I think also that's important for you to kind of to touch on a little bit is that the concept of time. I know for a lot of startups, time is important. You know, you cannot wait for another 6 months to a year to raise. You need the money now. But also, when you think about it from the investor's perspective, a lot of them have very small teams. So if they're, for instance, working on 2 transactions at the same time, the chances are that their ability to look at a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th is limited. So they often have, let's say, limited bandwidth to manage too many investments at the same time. So you need to have patience, and you need to have understanding that there is this flow of transactions that the investors are looking at, and that's why it's not as straightforward, or it's not as fast as you probably would like it to be. And I think something else that's important too before you start approaching investor is to know the type of investor that you want to approach. I'm not sure if the previous session and the previous speaker mentioned this, but when it comes to, for instance, VC, size matters, right? And when we say size matters, when it comes to this context, I want to give you a little bit of an example. Think of a venture capital fund that has, it's a size of $10 million. This fund is going to make 10 investments. It's going to put 1 million into each investment. So it's making 10 million into early stage startups. These startups, we know that it's very early, and the risk for them and the possibility of the failure is quite high. So typically, on average, they say that 8 out of 10 investments that any venture capitalist makes fails. And when we mean failure in this aspect, that means total loss. So if you have this $10 million fund, and you've made 10 investments, and you know that 8 out of them is going to fail, it means you have 2 left. You have $1 million here, and you have $1 million here. These 2 million and these 2 companies have to have the chance and have to have the possibility to make it up for at least the other 8 million that was lost. And then probably another 10 million in order for this fund to be generating a decent return for the investors. So the idea behind this, and why I'm putting this example forward to you, is because when you have this one investment that the VC has to make, every single investment has to have the potential to make it very big. So that's what I mean when I say that size matters. Size matters. Because how big can you become? You can be the greatest company on earth, but if you're going to grow your revenues from 100,000 to 150,000 to 200,000 to 220,000 to 250,000 over the next 5 years, this is not going to be big enough for a VC to be able to look into. So before you approach that type of investor, you need to be aware of what is the business model that you have. What is your desire in terms of what you want to do with your company? And if you don't want to become the next Uber or the next Karim or the next whatever that is, that's totally okay. and you don't have to go and approach that type of investor. There's other type of investors where the ability to repay matters. So we are an impact fund, and we invest primarily using revenue-based type of financing. A lot of it is also based on a loan type of structure. So for us, what we look at the team, and we look at the founders, and we look at the opportunity, but we also look at the ability to repay. So we need to look into the projections. We need to look into the cash flow generating capabilities of the companies and say, you know what, if we give this company $500,000 today, in 5 years' time, can they pay that back? And the other required return that we're expecting them to be able to repay. So when you approach a VC, a lot of the times it's a matter of how big can you become, and are you the team that could be able to do it? If you approach an investor similar to who we are, it's like, look, I have this investment opportunity and I'm going to grow it, and this expansion opportunity I'm going to grow, and I'm going to be able to pay it back at the end of the 5 years, if that's the term. Another type of investor that you might have is an impact investor. So here you would say that impact matters. And at that point in time, you want to have to figure out what type of impact do they care about. Now, I would probably say that all impact investors also have a financial return requirement where they say, look, we're not just doing this. This is not a non-profit or an NGO. So they need to see some sort of a financial return. But you also need to understand what is the impact that matters to them. For us, it's essentially gender. You know, we matter. For us, the gender aspect and component matters. That doesn't mean that we only invest in women, by the way, but we believe, and our core thesis is diversity and inclusion. So this is a very, very important thing, and this is a non-starter for us. If the company doesn't fit with this part of the mandate, there's no point in even approaching Amman Ventures, as an example. And I know I'm talking a lot, by the way, so I need to have a little bit of a break, having my tea.
Sorry, Jenny. Just to give you a pause of a few seconds. Can you just give us an example of investment that you have been doing in terms of size? Just to understand, because you work basically in the MENA region, so it's important, I think, for our participants to understand what they could expect for, I mean, from your company, but from other companies similar to you. And yep. The second question is, do you know how many female venture capital are in the region, based in the MENA region? Or because, you know, all the statistics say that there is not only a barrier in terms of access to finance, but from the other side, there is also very few business angel, capital venture, equity funds led by women. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of our ticket sizes, the minimum ticket sizes that we do is $250,000, and we go up to $1 million. The first transaction and the first investment that we made was $500,000. The second transaction that we made has also been $500,000, and the third transaction that we're making now is $700,000. So we are typically on the middle to the upper end of that range, because also from an investor perspective, we want to be able to manage the portfolio that we have. Because if we do a lot of very, very, very small investments, we're going to end up with a portfolio of 50 to 100 investments, and we just can't manage. When we say that we provide funding and business development and value creation support, we take the second component very seriously. And as part of our investment that we do, we create something called value creation roadmaps. And we cannot do and manage that aspect for 100 companies. So typically the ticket sizes are towards the bigger end. In terms of how many investors, yeah, I think what's interesting is that I think you find quite a few women in VCs and in investments, but a lot of them would probably be at somewhat of the lower levels. So you might not necessarily see them at the partner level. I know that there is a VC fund based in the UAE that is a gender lens fund. They invest in female entrepreneurs. I know of plenty of angel investors and angel investor initiatives that invest in women. And typically when you have someone as a female in a decision-making capacity, they would typically try to support other women and invest in other women. So there are several VCs that have a female partner, but also some of them would have them as principals or as associates or analysts. Now, that doesn't mean that their voices trickle up all the way to the investment decision, but I also think that as the region matures and as more of these analysts becomes associates and the associates becomes principal and the principal's post becomes, take up the step to the partner. I was a principal in my previous job, and we have now set out to create Amman Ventures. So I think as the region matures, you will see more women at decision-making roles in VCs. I think also at that point in time, I think it's important to say a little bit about what I kind of touched on before, is that you need to know the investor that you're approaching. I think there's nothing more frustrating from our perspective when companies come to us and it's obvious that they haven't done their homework about who we are. If you are based in Kuwait and you know that I'm a fund that invests in companies that are in Jordan and Egypt, why are you approaching me? I cannot invest in you even if I wanted to, So I think it's important from the entrepreneur's perspective to, as much as you can, because I understand that some investors have a limited information available publicly on social media or whatever have you, but as much as you can, try to really understand who they are before approaching them. It's very important to also understand where are they in their investment cycle. So as I mentioned in the beginning, investors are, we have investors that invest into our fund that we then invest into startups and SMEs. Where is this fund or this entity that you're currently speaking to? Because you usually have in a fund, you have a 10-year investment horizon. Typically, this is the standard, that they can take up to 12 years maximum. So you would have 5 years, that is your investment period. And then you'd have 5 years, that's the divestment period. If you're talking to this VC or this investor, and they're in their divestment period, it probably doesn't matter how good you are because they don't have money left for them to allocate to you. So they might just have a little bit of dry powder left in order to be able to support their existing investments. So you want to make sure that you understand where that investment period, where they're at. And one way to do that is just to look, when did they announce their fund? How many years ago was that? If they did that within a 5-year period, most likely they are in their investment period. So that's very, very important. So do your homework. It shows the investor that you're keen, that you're diligent, and that you become much more relevant for them to assess. So I think also it's important to speak to other people that have taken investments from this company or from this investor. Have they taken any capacity building programs from them? Check them out. Be a mystery shopper in a way. I think also, I know that the panel was called Gender Lens Investing, and I think it's important that we spend some time talking about Gender Lens Investing, or GLI, and how we define it in our side. I mentioned to you about our name in the beginning, that we really do put gender at the front. I mean, gender lens investing for us, it runs across, it runs wide, and it runs deep, right? It's really everything that we do. We have a lot of companies that come to us and we say, I don't want to become the next Uber. I don't want to become the next Karim. I cannot go out and raise funds from a VC. What we do is that we focus on the missing middle, is how they often label it. It's the companies that are, and that's where we find a lot of female entrepreneurs, by the way. They don't have that big trajectory that the VCs would need, as I explained based on the VC example. They're way too small for a private equity firm, because private equity is usually the ones that come into later stage before a company would go public, for instance. They're way too small for that. And they're also very often too risky for a bank because they don't have the collateral. So any company that doesn't fit within these 3 dimensions, that bulk, that missing middle is the one that we support. So these are companies that say, you know, and entrepreneurs that say, I want to grow this company. I have an expansion opportunity. I want to build the team. I want to generate X number of hundreds of thousands or a couple of millions in revenues, but I want to keep this company for me. This is my baby. I'm building it, and I would like to hand it over to my children maybe one day. So what we do is that we provide a different type of funding instrument. And we, like I mentioned, it's revenue based. So we essentially have 2 different types of instruments in our product portfolio. What is our product? We have one that's called revenue capital. And what this instrument does, it has a small equity component, usually less than 5%, that enables us to come into the company as a shareholder and put in certain voting rights into this company. Because after that, we extend a loan, and this loan is unsecured. It doesn't have collateral. So we need that equity component to be able to safeguard the rights of our investors, the ones who are giving us the money. Then this majority of this loan, it comes with an interest rate component that is usually below market interest rate, but it also has a revenue share component to it. So that means when the company goes out and builds their expansion and they build their company, if the company does better than expected, we do better than expected. And if the company does worse than expected, we do worse than expected. So that's one type of instrument. We do that in the conventional way where there's an interest rate. And we've also experimented with doing this in the Islamic way where we have no interest and it's only a revenue share component to the instrument. So that's like, you know, 1A, 1B type of thing. And the second instrument that we do is something that's called a redeemable note. And a redeemable note is very similar to a convertible note, but that a lot of VCs and accelerators use. But the difference with the way that we're structuring it is that we have a redemption mechanism. And what that means is that you can go either 2 paths with this note. You can either say, if I go out and raise more money in Series A from other investors, we as Amam has the right to convert and become an equity investor like everyone else. If the company doesn't go out and raise more money, once the company reaches a certain threshold, the company starts paying this instrument back to us. So again, it comes back to us, and the company needs to pay it back. Okay, so those are the instruments that we have, because a lot of when you make an equity only investment, you need to find someone else to buy it. And if the entrepreneur doesn't want to sell their company, or there is no natural buyer at the end of this 5 to 10 year period, this self-liquidating instrument is more suitable for the company, and it's also better for us, if that makes sense. If anyone has any questions, by the way. It seems that
I don't, no, not so far. I don't see on the chat.
Yeah, if anyone does, feel free to raise your hand, or we can have that conversation in between. So that's like the first aspect of what I want to talk about today, is like really understand your investor, understand what type of impact that they focus on, understand that really raising money from investors like Amam Ventures or any other VC, it really isn't for everyone, but you really understand who the investors are before you go and you approach them. The second aspect that I want to touch on a little bit now is the investment process. And I also think it's very important that you as entrepreneurs understand the investment process that we have, because that's also the second complaint. The first complaint that I heard when I was, in my prior role was it takes too much time and it's very slow. And the second complaint was that they don't know where they're at in the process. So it's too vague, and they don't know what to expect to hear back from the investor. So I want to shed a little bit of light of how our investment process works, so that you can understand that there are certain aspects and certain timeframes in order for you to expect to hear back from an investor like Amman Ventures. So we typically have a starting point. That's the initial screening. And that's where we ask ourselves, and we have an initial meeting with you, and we say, are you a mandate fit for us or for this investor? Do you operate and live and work in the right region from a geography perspective? Are you established as a proper company, or you haven't established it yet? This is very important, obviously. Do you have a team behind you? Do you have revenues? What's the expansion opportunity? What is the impact aspect? For us, we always ask at the beginning, what impact do they have? And what is the potential impact if we were to come in and fund the company? So at that time, it's just yes, no, fairly straightforward. If we like the company and we explain to them the different type of funding instruments and the options that we have on board, because we also have different instruments that is not typical with other investors. For us, it takes a long time to educate and to get the entrepreneur up to speed with our type of funding instrument, and for them to understand what it is that they get themselves into before we proceed, because we don't want to waste their time and we don't want to waste our time. So we have that after the initial screening, we have those sessions to be able to tell you, look, this is what we have. Do you want to proceed? Let's go. Then we do a concept note, and that's when we dig deeper. And we dig deeper, but we don't do full-fledged analysis. We assess the company, we assess the team, we assess the strengths and the weaknesses, we assess the opportunity at hand, the problem, the solution, the typical things. And we say, as a concept, is this a company that we, in principle, would like to support and would like to take it forward? We do a small report and we take it to our investment committee, and there we decide yes or no. If we say yes, then we go back and we continue to do additional deep dives, and we prepare a term sheet. And this term sheet is obviously an indication of interest to invest, but it's not legally binding. Now, Amman Ventures, typically, once we extend the term sheet, we have the intention to make the investment, provided obviously that we do all the due diligence and we get the approval at the investment committee level. But by the time you reach a term sheet stage with Amman Ventures, it's something solid. And I believe that it is so with a lot of other investors as well. So then you negotiate the terms and you sign, and then we go back and we prepare something that is called an investment report. This investment report is the majority and the main component that we take to our investment committee, and we essentially vote. That's where we have really the full-fledged. If they pass the investment committee at that point in time, essentially the investment is going to happen, but we need to do our legal due diligence. Financial due diligence, we typically try to do it before we come to the IC. If there's certain aspect of the financial due diligence that we haven't completed by the time we do the IC, we complete that after the vote. But the legal due diligence starts after this IC meeting. Then we draft the transaction documents, and then obviously back and forth, negotiating those terms. And then we find, and we close, we sign, and then we disperse. So this is a process. And this process usually takes, depending on how well prepared the companies are. I can tell you that the quickest one we've probably done so far is, I would say, 2 to 3 months. And the longest one that we've done so far is more than a year. So it all depends on how ready the company is to be able to provide us as Amman with the information that we need. So that's the investment process. And again, it matters depending on if you go to a VC, they would typically spend more time thinking on how big is the market, the team, the product, what have you. For someone like Amman Ventures, it's again, team is very important, but can they repay it? This is very, very important for us. So we spend a lot of time on the financial projections, and we spend a lot of time on really digging deep, incorporating our investment instrument into the financial projections of the company to really see, does this instrument help this company to grow, or does it hurt this company? because at the end of the day, the worst thing is for a company to take on a type of financing that is not right for them, right? I think also it's important, and at this point in time, I think we have someone in the chat, by the way.
Yes, there are a couple, there is a question from Hamed. Hello, Mr. Jain, and thank you for the presentation. My question regarding the impact you invest to see on the long term. As a matter of fact, gender is hard to measure because it should be only quantitative. How many do entrepreneurship has in such or such position, but mainly a qualitative issue. Is the investment really going to make the enterprise service products gender sensitive, gender transformative investment? What kind of tools, if you have example, you see to measure the impact of your investment at the gender level, especially in the long term?
Sure. So I think gender lens investing is an interesting concept that I think it's been around for quite a long time, but I think gender lens investing, GLI, is really picking up speed and steam in the last at least 5 years. When we first started off among investors, and I'm going to be very honest with you, right? I come from Sweden, where I can admit that the concept of gender was not something that I really thought about. I went to school, I was equal with my female and male students at school. I never thought that this is something that could hinder me. My main aha moment when I came to Jordan, and by the way, I know that we have an hour and a half, so I know that I have time to talk, obviously. I started off working in, I'll give you a story or an example of the real life of where I was at. I started off my professional career and I worked at an investment bank in Stockholm. I worked in equity analysis, and in the team, there were probably 20 to 30 analysts. This was in 2005. I know I'm getting old, so let's not go there, but this was a long time ago. There was one female investment analyst at the time in this investment bank in Stockholm in 2005. It was an Icelandic investment bank. This female analyst was analyzing retail and fashion, H&M, and the likes of that. So when I moved to Jordan in 2006 and I worked in asset management, by 2010, I was working for a local investment bank where the CEO was female. I was the head of the asset management. I had a female fund manager and a female portfolio manager underneath me. And this is in Jordan, in a country that ranks, at the time, I think, 143 out of 149 or something on the World Economics Forum Gender Gap Report. So you find in this part of the world, you find pockets of excellence and you find amazing women that do some cool stuff, right? But the problem where you find here is that this bubble is very, very small. And how can we get more people into this bubble? That's a problem because the majority of the rest is very, very unequal. In Sweden, you have the opposite. Everything is unequal, but you find these small, examples of the investment firm that I worked at that just are not gender equal at all. So going back to the question, when we first started off with our investment fund, we just want to support women. We don't really have a background in gender lens investing in terms of reporting on it, in terms of really figuring out what we're measuring. We're just like, look, we need to find a way to move the needle on women's economic participation. However we're going to do that, we're going to figure it out. So this is a journey, even for someone like us, this is a journey in really figuring out what it is and what's the best way for us to do it. So what we do at the screening stage, we use the 2X and the eligibility criteria. Once we make an investment and once we report back on impact, we use a gender equality scorecard along 6 dimensions. And those 6 dimensions are leadership and governance. And by the way, now you might put me on the spot here if I'm not going to be able to remember them. No pressure on me. Leadership and development, leadership and governance, sorry. Workforce participation. We talk about benefits and professional development. We talk about policies and procedures. We talk about the cap table, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the sixth one, I can't remember what it is. If you give me some time, I can look it up at that point in time. So what we do with these companies, we come in and say, look, we made the investments with you now. And we've made an initial score and say that you score 3 out of 5, okay? And then we come and say, we realize, what are we going to do in our value creation roadmap that we create? So we have 2 different types of documents. We have a funding legal agreement that measures and guides the investment. And then we have the value creation roadmap that measures and guides our capacity building and our business development support. And that's where the gender comes in. So we would do a business fundamentals assessment at that point in time. We do a gender assessment and we do an ESG assessment. And we would come and say, this is the score. And then we would come and say, look, we realize in the first year or 2 of your investment, of the term of our investment, I'm not going to ask you to come and implement a policy on workforce development or HR or whatever, because you're going to be busy building it out, what you're going to be building out. But by the time we come to year 3 or year 4 or year 5, I would like you, by the time that we leave, to have certain policies and procedures in place that you need to be able to implement and look at annually and to be able to communicate to your staff. So what we do is that we do annual reassessments of this score, and we come in and say, how can we help you to go out on that journey? So obviously there's the quantitative metrics of saying, how many more women have you employed? How many more women do you have in senior management? But also it's the other softer aspects of, do you have leave policies in place where women can come and say, they have flexible work environments. If they just had a baby, maybe they need to go home and nurse the baby at a certain point in time. These type of policies are very important for us to put in place. And by the time we leave, they need to be in place. So obviously sexual harassment is by default, it has to come into these companies, but also bear in mind, up until now, the majority of the people that companies that we have invested into are women, or they have at least a female founder. So a lot of this stuff is by default. But really what we come and say, in the beginning, we say, here's point A. We would like you to reach point B. What are the action items that we need to put and help you to put in place in order for you to reach point B? And then the last component is the M&E aspect of it. So we have an impact measurement platform that we're currently in the process of completing. We're nearly there, where we really have put in all of these softer aspects of it. I hope that I am answering that question in the best way. But I think each investment is going to have its own transformational journey. I think we have made an investment into a company that provides educational equipment tools for vocational training. So what this company does, you're welcome, Ahmed. What this company does is that they create a board for making and fixing an AC. And they will lay out the AC, so basically heating and cooling, and they will create the problems for a technician to come and help it solve, right? So they do this for products like in security cameras, surveillance, they do it for cars, they do it for AC, they do it for electronics. This is a female founder who are doing these type of boards for universities and vocational training schools. What we tell her and what we would like her transformational journey to be is that, look, we would like you to set up a separate place where women can also come and help to learn how to fix an AC. Because at the moment in these schools in Jordan, only men can apply. So for us, this becomes a transformational journey for her in order for us to be able to come in and say, how can we take the AC or the car and come and say, how can we get more women to train on something like that? So every investment is going to be different. Another investment that we're making is a company that wants to create a swimming pool, and they want to set up and build a swimming pool and an aqua fitness center. For us, it's important in Jordan, in particular, there's a lot of women who don't know how to swim. We want to be able to help more women come in and learn how to swim by the end of the 5 years. So, yeah, that's, I think I answered the question on that. I think maybe I want to touch a little bit upon what I think from an investor perspective, what you need in order to be ready. I think, Anna, does that make sense that we speak about this a little bit, depending on, I don't know what the previous presenter spoke about.
Melanie, in our presentation, mentioned what in principle should be done in terms of preparation from women-led business that want to apply for investment funds. But she did it from the women-led business perspective. I don't know if it's exactly matched with what you, from the investor's perspective, are expecting. Or maybe you can give some example about the fact when you see the most sensitive issues that women entrepreneurs should consider. When you were explaining before about this investment cycle, it's important to know what kind of role the women entrepreneurs have in this investment cycle and what should be prepared from their side when you are going to do the due diligence, where you are going to do the report. What is their role? Just waiting, provide information, providing document, there is any interaction with you, and where you see maybe there are more weaknesses in this full cycle. And if I may also have a question, is how much time takes? Meaning from when you receive the application until when you really make the transfer, we are talking about 1 year, we are talking about 2 years, how many times? Because this is, I think, when someone will come to see and to ask, they should be also be prepared in terms of, okay, if the average is 2 years, I need to present my financial projection from 2 years on. So it's just to understand this kind of element that I think could be important. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Okay, so great. Let's then dig into the components that you need to be ready. And I think so many of the female entrepreneurs that we meet with, again, we are not a VC fund. Amman Ventures is not a VC fund. If you want to go down and raise funds from VC, perfectly fine. You have plenty of accelerators that you can go into and get prepared and polished and whatever you want to call it. But we are not. So a lot of the companies that we meet with, they've never met or spoken to an investor before. But they're not ready. They don't have a pitch deck ready. Okay? They have an idea. They might have operated and run their business successfully, by the way. The one that I spoke to you about before with the vocational training equipment that puts them out on the board, she's been doing this business since 2006. She knows what she's doing, right? And she's taking money and facilities from banks before, but she's never sought investments before. So we understand that companies are not ready. That's why in our capacity building arm, which is Arcan, we currently have 6 programs under Arcan that helps companies become investment ready. One is a financial projections workshop, for instance. So we understand that there are certain things that needs to be done before you come, and we tell them that this is what you need to do. Depending on how fast they are to prepare this set of list of things, that process and that time that you're asking about, Anna, could really range from 3 months to more than a year. So what we need to see is a pitch deck, if you will, or some sort of a presentation of who you are. What are you doing? What is it that you're trying to solve? And there's plenty, if you just go out how to do a pitch deck, you'll find plenty of stuff online in order to help you with that. There's plenty of templates and, the problem, the solution, the team. You'll find all of those components online. I'm not going to cover that, but you need to have one. The second component, which is very important if you come to a fund like ours, and that's the financial projections. And I'm not sure how many on the team on the call now that are male versus female, but there's a typical general, let's say, aversion of women against understanding their numbers. I don't know why, but very often women are scared of numbers. Not everyone, but many. So financial projections is something that whoever you are, you have to figure out, and you should not be afraid of money and numbers and figures. But that also means that you don't necessarily have to be able to create a full-fledged financial statements and with 5 years of financial projections on your own. That's not what us as an investor, what we expect from the entrepreneur in this investment process role. That's also one of your questions, Anna. If you are the owner of the company, we expect you to be the owner and the CEO. You can hire other people to do this stuff for you. Do you need to understand the numbers? Yes, you do. You need to understand where the numbers come from, and you need to be able to read and understand them. But you don't need to be able to prepare them and create them yourself. So I would say that most likely you're better off to get someone to help you do it. Yeah, you're going to have to pay some money to get a financial analyst or some sort of a company to help you out with that. I personally think that there's a lot of initiatives out there now where you can get a grant, and it's something that we're also pushing for in our next cohort in Arkan, is that we're selecting a number of companies and we say, look, here is X $1,000. Go out and get the financial analyst to prepare your financial projections and come back and we'll pay for it, because this is what we need. So again, the financial projections, it differs depending on the type of company that you are and the type of funding that you want to seek. If you want to go and raise VC funding, you need to be able to show that scale. Remember what I told you, that you need to be able to, if I invest 1 million, you need to be able to give me back at least 10 or 15 or 20. So you need to show scale, and you need to show for you to be able to get there. And I think, at minimum, you need to be able to understand, to break down how you forecast your revenues. Because the worst thing is that when we come and we see a financial projections and we see top line revenues is going to grow by 10% or 20% or 50%. And we have no justification of why. But how are you going to do that? How are you going to grow your revenues by 50%? So you need to be able to break it down. I'm going to have X number of customers. They're going to be paying so and so. And I'm going to have a certain percentage of customers that are not going to come back. Whichever way that you're going to do it, show us how you do it in the model. And just like think about removing those mental barriers that numbers are scary, because they're not. You just need to spend some time to understand them. That's important. Team is obviously something that is super important, that everyone is going to continue to talk to you about. And the reality is, of the people that we see, this is a one-person show, a one-man show, one-woman show. In VC, you always typically have co-founders, at least 2 or 3, right? But in the SME world, where we operate as a mom, many of them are alone. So who's around you? Who's part of your management team that supports you and help you do what it is that you want to do? It's important that they can execute on the opportunity or solving the problem that you have presented. You need to be able to show, and maybe this is more from a startup perspective, a clear product market fit, and to show that people want your product. And you need to be able to show that there's some sort of attraction in people actually ramping up and wanting to buy more. Again, going back to the market, we're investing into a company in early stage education, in early stage before they reach school. And in this part, when we make an investment like this, and we were talking about the market opportunity and what have you, it doesn't really matter the size of the market of all of early stage investing in early stage education in Jordan or in the region. It doesn't matter. I'm concerned with this particular entity in this part of Amman in Jordan. Can they attract their customers? Can they do what it is that they're saying to do? And that's it. So from that perspective, market is less important. If you're becoming and you go into the VC, market is damn important, because is it $1 billion market that you're addressing? How much of that can you capture? So again, thinking about the type of investor and who you are, and stay true to who you are. because I also don't think that it's not good for you to be tweaking and twisting and turning yourself and bending yourself over backwards just so that you can go out and raise VC money. No. Decide what it is that you want to do and the type of company that you want to build and the thing and the opportunity that you want to go after. And then you try to find the funding and define the means and the way for you to be able to get there. And I feel like I really do, I am talking a lot, but again, do interrupt me if you have any questions. What's interesting in the SME aspect, where companies have been around for some time and they're doing what they're doing, is that many of them, we need to see that there's a real desire to grow. Because some companies, they just, you know what, I'm just happy to trot along and do what I usually did. She might have a restaurant or whatever it would be, and I don't necessarily want to create a chain of restaurants. I just want to bake my cookies in this restaurant and that's it. And that's totally fine. But obviously you cannot come and seek funding for that. So we need to see that there's a real desire that you want to grow. And it isn't always the case with female entrepreneurs because many of them are risk averse, and I'll get to that later. But I think last and not least, you need to have a very clear ask. What do you want from the investor? What is the amount that you think that you need? And show us how you're going to be spending that money. Is it 50% of this I'm going to build a new building? Or am I going to build out a mobile app? I'm going to spend 30% on marketing. Show us what that is. So the clear ask, you definitely need to have that. From a startup and early stage investing, I would typically say that you should have at least 18 to 24 months of funding of your operations. So a runway, as they call it. And in this part of the world now, I think with this environment, which is a little bit challenging, it might even be important to have more than that. So you want to make sure that you're raising the right amount of funding so that you can go back and be able to concentrate on building out what it's that you say that you're going to build out before you have to go back and raise again, if that makes sense. So at this point in time, I could probably tell you a little bit some examples on how we've, some of the companies, how they have succeeded versus they have not. There was one company that came to us, and I'm not going to go into details of who they are and what they're doing because it kind of gives it away. But this is a company where the CEO had been there for a while. And when they're coming to us, she's presenting herself as a chairman or chairperson. And she has identified a CEO that will take her place. And they would she would step aside to be more at the board level and have this new CEO come in. So we ask and we say, you know, you as the CEO and the regional CEO and you as the new CEO, what's your ownership percentage in this company? Because this was funded by some other investors. And when we dug a little bit deeper and when we realized that there's a 5% stock option pool that hasn't been allocated yet, and the stock option pool, I mean, I'm not sure how familiar people are on the call with these options. It's essentially shares that you allocate to the team. We realized that this is a company that now has a CEO that essentially is just an employee. And she doesn't really have that much skin of a game. And if the going gets tough, she's not going to stick around and do this. So for us, is there real commitment? No, we cannot guarantee that. So for us, this becomes an unfundable company. How the team is structured and how you're making sure that the team members are there to be with you for the longer term, it really matters. Because if that CEO leaves, we're in big trouble. That was a company that just, you know, even from that initial screening, we say, look, the way that this company is currently structured, this is not fundable from our perspective. Other companies would say that they just don't have a market that is big enough, or they might have sold to customers, but the market fit is still not really there. Again, remember, someone like Amman Ventures, we want to finance companies that can pay it back. We don't put in equity and hope to exit 10 years from now or 15 years from now and hope for the best, you know? So we need to be able to see that there's traction, that there's product market fit. People want your product, what it is that you're selling. A broken cap table is another, maybe a broken cap table comes in with the first. And what do I mean when I say a broken cap table? If a company comes and they raise a lot of money, and by the time they reach not even Series B, the founder is down at like 10%, 15% ownership. Again, he becomes an employee. This is fundamentally wrong because you want to buy into the founder. You want to make sure that the founder has skin in the game and they're committed to doing what it is that they're doing. So I would say those are the components where things are not, they're just not investable. The companies that have shown and that we have decided to invest into, they have perseverance. They have shown that they're really up for the challenge of doing this. They come back in a timely manner with the information that we ask for. They don't go away 6 months and then don't hear a word from them. You know, having regular touch points with the companies and the investors is important. They've been able to show that they have financial projections where we would feel that there's comfort. We do different stress testing, so we see that they can actually pay it back. So yeah, I think there's several of those components, and they really have that desire and that will to grow and to really take this forward to the next level. If I want to talk about the weaknesses that we see, I see that someone is saying something. You're right, but it's still not easy at all to find the investor that you're looking for. The trust issue is always the case. The entrepreneur is always the passionate one, and less business mentality. I agree. I mean, look, this isn't easy, huh? And I think I said in the beginning that less than like 0.2% or less than 1% of all companies ever who tried to raise money from VC ever raised money from VC. So it's hard and it's not easy. And that's why I'm saying that maybe, are you really building the type of company that is suited for this type of financing? Right? It's I think we also need to be true to ourselves and say, this is what I would like to do. But at some point in time also, we need to be honest and say, you know, I tried it, it didn't work. I need to move on to something else. Right? And this is the crude reality of what we're talking about. Or you find funding and investments from elsewhere. Again, it's nothing wrong. There's no failure in any shape or form in saying that, you know, I don't want to take this type of financing. If we look at the typical weaknesses that we see, I mean, I am generalizing big time, but
Jenny, sorry, Doa would like to take the floor.
Sure.
Doa, go ahead, please. And maybe, hi Doa, if you could just explain who you are and what you're doing, because it would be also interesting for Jenny to know. Thank you.
This is Doa Wadi. I'm the CEO of Business Women Forum Palestine. We work with well-established businesswomen and many entrepreneurs. And part of our work is finding investors, angel investors, VCs at all levels for our beneficiaries and businesswomen. The case is, thank you, Jenny. You put it in a very a simple way. The ideas that the flow of how did you explain it? It's very really easy for anybody who's into the VC. The issue is the most obstacle that we face is to convince women to start even thinking about getting the idea of how to start thinking of approaching VCs or to think about having VCs with you and to have somebody who will take you. They rather prefer to stay at the same level that they are now than going further and to see how the growth will be in 5 years, 10 years. And we face this every year. I face this with different mentalities, with different sectors, different levels.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think for what we need to do, I always look at it at two different axes, right? You have the one axis where you have investment readiness. Do they have all these materials that I was telling you about? Are they ready on this axis? And on the other axis, you have their willingness to actually grow. We as an investor can only come in when these two intersect, when you're investment ready and when you actually want to grow. Because if you don't want to grow, then it's okay just to do what you want to do. How we are approaching this, Dua, we have, I mean, my two partners, Fida and Tamara, they are the co-founders of Women in Business Arabia. It's an online community for more than 45,000 women. And they see a lot of women in that group in terms of what their problems are, what their challenges are, what they're facing, and what have you. A lot of the times, I think that women feel that they feel lonely, they're scared, they're risk averse. They say, like, you know what, if I don't understand it, I'd rather not do it.
Exactly.
And they're like, I'd rather hold off than actually take the plunge and do it. But then we would come in and say, and this is where I think me and Fida and Tamara as partners, we complement each other really well. Fida is a serial entrepreneur and she's raised funding several times before. She's like, look, I've been in your shoes. I've been there and I've done that. We are there as an investor, you know, who's got your back. We know that the going is going to get tough. We know that you're going to have sleepless nights. I have sleepless nights. We're currently finalizing a legal contract, and I was just up all night thinking about, you know, the Fed has just increased interest rates, and we need to be able to make sure that, you know, we can safeguard. You see what I mean? We all have these sleepless nights where we think about the stuff that troubles us. So because I guess we are women, and we invest in other women and other companies that are committed to diversity and equality, we can come and say, look, we're going to be there with you in this journey. You're not alone. And I think that's what's important for them to know, that, yes, we're going to challenge you. Yes, we're going to be requiring things from you. We had a meeting last week with one of the entrepreneurs to say, look, your financial reporting is not up to standards. You need to, you know, raise the bar. Yeah. We need to be able to show, you need to show us how you're, you know, where all the money is coming. You need to have forecasts, right? So we're not going to be an easy investor, but we're going to be someone there that say, you know what do you need? For one of the investments, we put in a business coach and we helped this company. She was setting up a manufacturing facility. And we had this business coach. He had spent more than 40 years in manufacturing. He came in and helped her assess the current location that she was in. They ended up changing the location. They're speaking to her current suppliers that are out in Malaysia and Indonesia, and they say, look, use this local manufacturing facility here to do some of your products locally here in Jordan instead of doing it out there. So he came in and he was I think for 2 quarters, he was an instrumental part of helping her take this, launching her manufacturing facility. So I think it's important also from, again, when you look at the investor that you're approaching, understand who it is that you want to approach. Because I realized that if you're a female founder and you want to think about going to approach VCs, it could be intimidating if you have 3 alpha male partners at the top level that you're speaking to that are sitting there and saying like, oh, how big can you become? Because women, a lot of the time, they get assessed based on the achievements that they've done. Whereas and this is, by the way, studies that have been shown, and if there's any guys on the call, I apologize, but it's often shown on average that men are asked more about the future potential versus women are being asked more about the past achievements. So yeah, you need to, if you have that in front of you, I would be hesitant too to go and approach someone like that. But you also have to be a little bit of a chameleon, and sometimes you need to, I think the Americans, they're the ones who say it, fake it till you make it. You really have to put up a facade and come and say, you know what, I've got this, and I know how, and I can give you another example of my husband, who's an entrepreneur and he runs his own business. I remember he does security and he was approaching one of the banks and they wanted facial biometric solution. This was maybe 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago. And he's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. No worries. That will be part of the proposal. And he came back to me at home at that night and he said, you know, Jenny, this bank is asking me for facial recognition and I have no idea how to do it. I was like, what? You've just pitched to the bank that you know how to do it. How does that work? I would never be able to do that. How can you go and pitch an idea and say that you can do it when in the back end, you don't know how to do it? He's like, no, I'm not worried.
But this is an entrepreneurial thinking, exactly.
Yeah, he's like, I'll figure it out. And I was like, wow. But I think women, well, again, I'm generalizing again, but I think most women don't have that set of DNA or that set of thinking. Mm-hmm. I would want to be the one that's prepared, and I would only want to go out and sell something that I know that I can actually do. That's me, that's Jenny. So again, maybe I deviated a little bit from the question, but I think maybe sometimes when you speak to those customers and you're going to say, you know what? Yeah, I can do it. And then inside you're like, I have no clue. But you put on this face and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to be able to do it. Yeah. Because sometimes you will figure it out. And if you really put yourself onto that pressure, you know what? You might actually be able to deliver what it is that you say you're going to do. And the worst thing is that you fail. And I think we also need to think about failure not being as bad as what we think that it is.
Exactly.
So what if you fail? So what? You can start again and do something new.
Thank you, Jenny, really.
So I think some other weaknesses that we see is that they're very conservative in their projections. Because they're risk averse, they want to be comfortable with the projections that they send across. If they send across 5%, 10%, 15% growth, this is not the growth opportunity. Come on. So you need to have a growth mindset and to be able to show realistic but optimistic growth. One company that came to me, she was, I think she's making around $120,000 in revenues. And then I think she was going to make 700,000 next year, and then 3.5 million, and then 8 million. And by the way, her husband works with her as well. So clearly, this is the husband who's doing those financial projections. And I was like, I understand it's good that you think big, but also be realistic about when you think big. So think big, but yes, be able to defend how you're really going to get there when you put those type of projections forward. Something else that we found, and by the way, I can talk forever about this. So if there's anything that that you want to ask or anything, stop me. But many women, in particular, when they sit with other women, they're very open with their weaknesses. One lady in particular, she has a health food shop, and she's one of the biggest importers of health food products in Jordan, by the way. I mean, this is a lady that generates at least 2 million JDs. This is like, I don't know, $2.7 million in annual revenues. I mean, this is a girl that's like, you know, she knows her stuff. She was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do whatever it was. It's just, okay, you know, be open, but don't be too transparent with your weaknesses, because that also doesn't really give the best signal. And I think the last thing, and I realized that we have like 15 minutes of the session left, is the last thing I want to touch about. That is something that is very relevant, that is fresh in my mind. What we're doing now is that we're launching a program around executive presence. And executive presence for women in particular is very important, because it's about using your body language, using your tone of voice, and even using your appearance in a way to be able to get your messages across. It's to be able to be heard when you speak. This is very, very important, whether you're in an offline setting or if you're in an online session that we're now. And now you're probably going to start to think about me and how I'm using my executive presence. But using your body language, using gestures, using different intonations in your voice, using your eye contact when you're speaking to people, this really matters. Because also that shows confidence, and it shows, I think there's a, you know, there's the importance of non-verbal communication. It's something that you shouldn't underestimate, Because what we say with our bodies and our eyes and our tone can communicate so much more and so much better than what we actually say. And I think it's important to be aware of that. Not necessarily that you can control it all of the time, but I think you need to be able to, if you're on that Zoom call and you're pitching your product, make sure that you're, you know, sitting with the camera face like this. There's proper lighting, that you're sitting there, you can see all of your face, that you're looking into the camera and not everywhere else down there. Because if you're looking at someone down here on the screen there, they don't see that you're looking at them. They only see when you're looking into that green dot on the camera, right? So this stuff it's more on the softer skill, a little bit fluffy maybe, if you will. But if you're really coming and you want to make an impression with an investor, you have about an hour and that's it. If you're not at your top performance in that hour, most likely you might feel, or the investor might feel, you know, there's something, I don't know, that wasn't right about this particular meeting, if you will. So I mean, this is what I have, Anna. I know that I have spoken for a long time.
No, but very, very insightful. Thank you very much. I think it's important to have the perspective of female investors. I don't see any hand raise, no comment on the chat. So inviting the other to intervene, I would like to ask you a couple of things, because first of all, Doha, as she said, she's working with the Women Business Association in the MENA region. She's working in Palestine, but she's cooperating also with other countries. My question is, Aman Venture is working with women business associations in this sense, and what kind of cooperation do you have with them? Second question, when we're talking about investment, especially in the last year, the risk is that the investment funds tend to invest in, let's say, trending sector, meaning the more promising one that often are the one linked to technology and innovation. So, and these can represent a risk for women working in more traditional, let's say, sectors. So how much important is for you when you make your assessment about that dimension of innovation and technology? And the last question is about what you were mentioning at the beginning. If I understood correctly, you provide also support in terms of business management and business development. Can you give us a concrete example what women that could be interested in applying for Aman Venture funds could receive a support, or I mean, and how do you provide it to single, to individuals, or to network, and so on? Thank you. Sorry, I hope I was not too long. Thank you.
That's okay. Good. I'm happy that at least you're asking questions, which is good. And I also, before I get into those questions, I just want to say, I'm looking at Doa's comment again in the chat, and she's saying trust is always the case. Right? It's a trust issue. And this is 100% correct. When we meet with entrepreneurs, many, often for the first time, and again, they're companies that don't necessarily have met with venture capitalists before, they're not going to open up and tell me what revenues that they're making or what margins that they're having. This is a lot of the times, maybe the first meeting that we have, we don't even talk about that stuff. Because we need to, I think women need to connect more on a I'm not going to say on a deeper level, but more on an emotional level before we kind of start talking about that. If it works in the first half an hour and then the second half an hour, yeah, I would say, just as a, in the ballpark figure, what kind of revenues do you generate? They would open up. But I think it's also important that there's totally a trust element that's involved in this, because who are we to come and ask you about all these questions about your company? You have no obligation whatsoever to share information with me, right? So I think it's very important that you build that trust very early on. And I think also for women in particular, we don't want to come across as intimidating. Maybe sometimes people are intimidated by me. I'm a foreigner, you know, my Arabic nos shway shway. But so yeah, I do maybe come across, and that's why, you know, Fida would come in and say, you know, Fida has, you know, she's run several businesses before. She can relate and completely connect with these entrepreneurs immediately. In terms of associations, Anna, we have plenty of different partnerships that we've done. Now, I am not really the right person to talk about the associations and those type of partnerships. You know, Tamara, my partner, I think she would be much better person to speak about that. The investment side of things, that's where you kind of, where I come in and those type of things. So, but we do with the Business Professional Women Association, what we do, and I guess we work with them a lot on the capacity building, on the business development support. This is under Arkan. We have 6 programs, and most of those ones are pre-investments, by the way, before you're getting an investment from Amman Ventures. So we have one that's called Master Your Numbers. It's the financial projections that we spoke about before. We have another one that we just finished the second cohort of now. It's called Action for Growth. This is a business innovation boot camp, if you will. It was 1 month where they had certain compulsory topics and certain electives that they have to choose. It goes from everything. It goes from mental fitness. It goes from businesses and processes. It goes from, you know, marketing, legal, finance. It covers everything. Huh? We have a very cool program called Get On Board that we have also completed the second cohort, and we're about to open the applications for the third. This is where we want to get more women onto board positions in this part of the world. We've done 2 cohorts in Jordan, and I think we're also building it out in Egypt, if I'm not mistaken. Again, Tamara is definitely the person to speak to on that. But it's all about trying to get more women onto boards. We have a program called WATBA, which is for your more earlier stage companies. These would be the ones that are typically mostly home-based businesses that are in the process of wanting to establish and wanting to set up their companies. We also have a whole program for that. We have an online library on YouTube where we have a lot of those programs. I spoke about digital tools. Fida spoke about work-life balance. We have business model canvas. All of those YouTube videos are available, by the way. We're starting a new program called Fikra, which is essentially the idea and how you put it into reality. So it's like so you start like Fikra on the very early stage. You have WATBA for the small home-based businesses. You have Action for Growth, which is for the companies that are established and want to grow. And then you have financial projections, workshops to help them with that. And last but not least, we have impact circles. And that's where we talk about impact and how do you think about impact and where are you at in your impact journey. And yeah, it's a very, very interesting discussions that we have with companies around impact as well, just to raise awareness on that. So that's what we do. After investing, that's when we go deep and we do more like surgical interventions. So I mentioned the business coach for one of the companies. We have one where we need to help out in terms of selecting contractors. So we help them with the processes and procedures. We have one that needs help with the marketing and digital and social media presence. So we put in support for that. Now, it's not us who does it, but it's obviously we bring in third-party consultants to help us with that. So yeah, that's essentially importance of tech. That's the last one.
Sorry, Jenny, before going to the technology innovation, someone in the chat asked if you have any program in Tunisia.
Again, I think that Tamara has been speaking to someone about the Get On Board program in Tunisia. I think. I'm not sure exactly where that is at in the process, but the other, what we're trying to do with our programs is that we always try to have an online version of it. So we also have a series called Tanweer, where we have regular sessions where they're also all online. So I think there should be a fair amount of information available online if you want to have a look at that. But Action for Growth and the Master Your Numbers, the workshops, yeah, those are more like in person. You need to work with the company specifically.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good. The last question I had about innovation and technology, because in the MENA region is something quite...
So, I mean, I spent 5 years working and looking at with technology companies. So obviously, I have a bit of a soft spot for those type of companies. But Amam Ventures is sector agnostic. We invest in any sector, really. I mean, we've had education is a very big sector for women. I mean, it's one of the women tend to cluster, and that's one of the education and the sectors that they focus and cluster in. So we see a lot of companies there. E-commerce is another, creative and design, manufacturing, surprisingly enough. We would like to see companies being tech enabled. That doesn't mean that they need to have tech at its core, but to have some sort of a tech element. It's important because now you need to be able to, any company needs to have some sort of a tech-enabled version of themselves. I'm not sure why the Amam Ventures cannot open the page. It opens fine from my side, so maybe it's something that has to do with no,
I shared also the link on LinkedIn, so they can get there somewhere. So yeah. No worries.
I guess we've run out of time. I'm happy till the hour and a half. I was a bit worried at first, but I hope that this was fruitful for you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing the experience of Amam Venture. I think it's very interesting for our participants. And just to confirm that we will have the recorded video today. So we will share with our participants of today and the one that registered but couldn't join us. So I think that we will also circulate the full report of today, and the people who could be interested to join you, we will give them the reference of your website and LinkedIn, so it's easy maybe to contact, also to have additional information on the programs that you are running, that you were mentioning, and just to check the covering the geographical area covered by your interventions. And as Melanie was saying also this morning, this kind of event for us is also an opportunity to create network, to widen network, because it's important, I think, for all the women entrepreneurs to understand and to know more how to get access to funds, but also to share experiences. I mean, positive or negative, because we learn from all of them. So thank you very much again. Thank you, Jenny. Hopefully we will meet soon physically somewhere. Thank you again for all the participants. Thank you again to Thomas as representative of UNIDO, and thanks to the interpreters for today. Again, soon you will receive the link. So if you want to share also with your colleagues, because as Jenny said, it's important that the team is involved in all your enterprises. So thank you again, and have a nice afternoon. See you soon in further events of UFM UNIDO activity. Thank you again. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.